Hello, Facebook friends. It's Nancy. I'm back in my kitchen. Woohoo! And I have a great recipe for you today. Somebody encouraged me to make a video of this sweet potato pizza crust. And I posted something the other day about sweet potatoes and recommended this pizza crust, and somebody wanted the recipe, so I will post the recipe, but I want to show you how to make it. I love, love, love sweet potatoes. They've become one of my favorite foods, and there's so many different things that you can do with them. And I eat sweet potatoes all year long, but particularly in the fall, the winter. They're so warm, they're so nourishing. I feel like, I don't know, they just sort of like really bring me down into the earth when I'm eating something like that. So, and who doesn't love pizza crust, right? Who doesn't love pizza, especially me coming from New York? But so it's nice to have a little bit of an alternative than just the whole wheat pizza dough, which I don't really eat that much anymore. But to have a pizza crust that is just full of nutrients, you know, the beta carotene, you just look at it, right? To me, it just screams out like fall is here. So what I do is a couple times I will use it as to make my pizza, but a lot of times I'll just make the crust and then I'll just cut it up and I'll just use it for slices of bread. And this is a suggestion that I had made to a friend of mine, Judy, that you can then take that bread, right? It's made out of sweet potatoes, and you can add hummus to it. You could add avocado, so it turns into like an avocado toast. You could put some pesto on it. I mean, there's all sorts of things, right? I'm just gonna let your imagination go here. So I'm gonna just show you how to make the crust. Then you can add to that what you want to make your pizza, or you can just cut it up into some slices and use it just for bread, right? So it's super simple. You start off by cooking 1 cup of sweet potatoes. So what I did was I peeled my sweet potatoes, I cut them up into little cubes, and then I boiled them in some water until they were soft. So this is 1 cup that I am adding in here. Just 1 cup sweet potatoes, giving them a little bit of a mash, but they're really nice and soft. So that's cool. So 1 cup, and then you're gonna take a cup of oat flour. I've never bought oat flour. I think they sell it at the store, but I'm not sure. So I just take my oats, not steel cut oats, but like rolled oats, and I put it in my, do I have it? I have a little tiny mini blender. So I put it in that and I make my own oat flour. It's probably not as fine as maybe you would get from something else, and maybe I could, put it in a couple of times, but I'm okay with that. In fact, one time there was a big oops. I made this recipe and I forgot to make the oat flour, and so I just put in whole grain oats. It was fine, right? It was just kind of like that whole grain oaty bread that you might get at the supermarket. So all is good, right? I just try to be real with you, and I've had so many mess ups in my preparation and my meals and my food. I've never gone hungry. So anyway, so you put in 1 cup of oat flour. So this is nice too. This is a gluten-free recipe. And then we've got baking soda, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Whoops. Oh, I found a teeny tiny little magnet. Interesting. Glad that didn't get in the food. My gosh. All right, so we have 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and we've got oregano, basil, salt, pepper, and curry powder if you like. So let's see, we've got a 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil. Now this basil came from my basil plants, I think from last year, and then I had just too much of them, so I dried them out. You can just dry them out on the counter, or you can use a dehydrator. And then I just kept it for the year, and I've been using it. So I love spices and herbs, so this calls for half a teaspoon of dried basil. So I'm just going to do like a heaping teaspoon of it. All right, there we go. You can even add a little bit more. I don't think you can ever have too much basil. Okay, so we got the basil, and then we have the dried oregano. I wish I could say that the oregano is something that I grew, but it's not. Comes from Trader Joe's. Trader Joe's has some great spices, and they're also inexpensive. So, oh, I love the smell. So half a teaspoon again. I'm just going to use a little bit of a heaping teaspoon. The smell of dried oregano really brings me back to one of the local pizza shops that we had in Massapequa, which is where I grew up. So yummy, yummy. All right, half a teaspoon of sea salt. Is that going in? Yep. So I already ground up my my salt. I got half a teaspoon. Salt is one thing that I don't add more to. I'm not going to measure the whole thing out, but it's probably about half a teaspoon. And then we're going to move on to the pepper that I have not ground up yet. So this calls for 1/4 teaspoon. Pepper. Simple, simple. This recipe, the sweet potato, it's actually sweet potato pesto pizza, which I've made. It's really also super delicious, made with sunflower seeds. Comes from one of my favorite cookbooks, giving a plug for Sahara Rose, Eat, Feel Fresh, a contemporary, modernized, plant-based Ayurveda cookbook. One of my all-time favorite cookbooks. Okay, so we have 1/8 of a teaspoon of the pepper. My measuring spoons don't go down that small, so I've got 1/4, and I'll just put in like 1/2 of that, maybe even a little bit more. Okay, and then we've got the 1/4 teaspoon of the curry powder. I have a little bit of a hot curry powder, but I'm just going to put that in. That one is optional, so if you don't like the flavor of curry, then don't put it in. I happen to love it. Just really a combination of some delicious herbs. And that is about it for the dough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to mash that all up. Probably end up using my hands here. And I've got some parchment paper that I'm going to put it out on. And I'm going to knead that until it forms kind of like a sticky dough. So I'm going to get that out now. And the recipe suggests using a rolling pin, but the last time, or the first time I ever made this recipe and I tried to use the rolling pin, it was a disaster. I'm just going to sprinkle down a little bit of the oat flour. Yeah, I couldn't get the batter, the dough off of the rolling pin. So I just, using my hands here to, showing you here, just to kind of mix it up into a ball. And then I take my hands and I just flatten it out that way. So this is baked on 400. I have not preheated my oven, but I will do that when I'm done making the dough. And what I can do is I will post a picture later of my sweet potato pizza crust. Super easy. Right, I've just been kind of forming this with my hands. There's just a little bit of oats and spices, so you want to get that all in there. And I'm just going to mash it down. You can already smell definitely the oregano. So I'm just starting in the middle, working my way out towards the edges of the pizza. Now it doesn't make a huge crust, so it's kind of small pieces. So if you want, and you want to make 2, then you can just double the recipe, right? Just working it on some parchment paper right on top of my baking sheet. You want to make it thick enough that it's going to be able to come off of the sheet, right? You don't want it too thin. You can make it any shape you want. So I'll bake this, and then tomorrow morning, if I want to have some toast, I'll just reheat it in my toaster oven. And I love avocado on this, so it's just so good. All right, I think I am just about done with my sweet potato pizza crust / bread. And there you got it. All right, I'll post the recipe, I'll post my picture, and go out and get some sweet potatoes and join me another afternoon for some Facebook Live cooking. Have an awesome, beautiful day. Bye, my friends.